after the first week or so of free agency, thought it'd be a great time to go ahead and take a look at what the NFL draft now looks like with updated team needs, kind of new positions for the trades. Obviously, the Bears no longer are picking number one, the Panthers are. So let's dive into this 2023 mock draft. First up, we've got the Carolina Panthers on the clock. Not sure that they have exactly settled in on one quarterback specifically yet, but I do think that there's been the most smoke behind CJ Stroud going number one overall. He's got a lot of the tools, the build, the accuracy that Frank Reich and a lot of these coaches on the staff really like. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to go with CJ Stroud. I think he could be a great signal caller for the Panthers. Obviously won't have DJ Moore as he goes over to Chicago, but I like the infrastructure that they have in Carolina to be a successful team with CJ Stroud at the helm. At number 2, we have got the Houston Texans on the clock. I do think this is going to be Bryce Young. They've really upgraded the offensive line, re-signed Laramie Tunsil. I think that they've gotten some good players all across that offense. It's all going to be about building an infrastructure that you can really help develop Bryce Young and protect him due to that small frame he has. I do think he is the best quarterback in this draft, even though he is a little bit small. Obviously, that's going to put some teams off, no doubt about it, but I do think the Texans take him number 2 overall here. For the Arizona Cardinals, I think this is certainly a possible trade back situation. I do think that, a team could look to come up and go snag a quarterback in front of Indianapolis, but I also think that the Cardinals don't have to move if they don't like any of the offers to come up at the moment. So I do think that they could just sit and take Will Anderson. Their defensive line is completely devoid of talent. They lost Zach Allen in free agency as well. He went to Denver, and so they really don't have much at all on that defensive front. So I think Will Anderson is certainly a possibility here. I do think that a trade is possible, and if somebody were to come up, I do think that it could be a team like the Raiders if they really like one of Richardson or Levis. I do think that potentially, the Colts could come up and just secure their player right there, and I do actually think that that is perhaps what I'm going to do here. I think they just go ahead and provide, a nice pick to ensure that they go up and get the player that they want at number 3 overall. They're not going to sit around and see if somebody else will trade up and take that pick from them. So they're going to go ahead, they're going to give up 79, Washington's pick here, and they're going to go trade up to number 3 to ensure that they go get the quarterback that they want. This is a very tough decision here for Indianapolis because I do think they need a quarterback to start year 1, which is more what Levis would be, but also Richardson has higher upside. I think he has the better tools, and he's somebody that you're probably going to really fall in love with in this draft cycle. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I do think they potentially go with Levis here. I just think he fits a little bit better what they need. For the Cardinals now, I think Will Anderson just makes so much sense. You trade down, you still get the best defensive player in the draft besides maybe Jalen Carter, which there's just a lot of uncertainty there with Carter. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals to do this. Pick up an extra, mid-round pick, still get your guy, and for Indianapolis, they ensure that they get the quarterback that they really want. For Seattle, I really wouldn't put it past them to take a quarterback here. And I actually am going to take Anthony Richardson. I think he is the only quarterback that they would consider doing this for. Geno Smith played really well, and I get it that they just signed him to a 3-year extension, but it's really kind of a 2-year contract with an option at the end of it. I think Richardson would really benefit from sitting for a year or 2, developing those insane physical gifts that he has, and then you can put him in and he could be the long-term option for your future there in Seattle. Not sure a lot of Seattle fans will like that, but I really love the upside, and I think that either in Seattle or Detroit, Anthony Richardson will get the most out of himself, where if he goes somewhere where he has to start immediately like Indianapolis, I do think that it could cause problems and potentially stunt his development a little bit. I think this would be a perfect landing spot for Richardson. For the Detroit Lions now, I think Tyree Wilson is going to be the pick. Obviously, Jalen Carter could certainly be the guy, no doubt about it. He does kind of seem to have some of his legal things getting cleared up. Wasn't given any jail time for the most recent charge where that was kind of settled, but I still just think there's going to be a little bit of hesitation there, just not 100% sure if everybody is going to be very comfortable with his character. So I do think that he could slide a little bit in this draft. Tyree Wilson is thought up very highly in the NFL circles. He's got long arms, very athletic, very powerful. I think he is going to be, a top 7 or so pick. And this seems like a good landing spot for, the Lions team that really kind of sorted their corner situation out a little bit. For the Raiders, they signed Jimmy Garoppolo. They kind of, I think, are comfortable with sitting, and, maybe if Levis or Richardson gets to them at 7, they would take them, but I don't feel like they need to trade up at this point to go get one of them. I think they can sit and take somebody like Devin Witherspoon, who's going to be, a very physical, good corner for them that you can stick on the outside. He kind of fits that Raiders mentality. They need a lot of help in the corner position, and I think he would be a great fit there in Vegas as they kind of revamp that defense and look a little bit more imposing on that side of the ball. For the Falcons, they've got a lot of different ways that they can go here. They did sign David Onyemata. They signed Jesse Bates on the defensive side of the ball. So I like some of the upgrades that they got there. I still think that they could add a really good corner. I think Christian Gonzalez would be very much considered here. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that they're going to let Jalen Carter fall that far. It's tough because, he's a Georgia kid. I think they would love to keep him. But it's all those legal issues. Once again, you just don't know where he is going to go. I am going to go ahead and have them take him here. It's just a big position of need. He's kind of a hometown guy. I think if they feel comfortable with his character, he would be a great pick because he is one of the best talents in this draft, hands down. That's unfortunate for the Bears. I think they really would have liked to get Jalen Carter, but they can go and add to the offensive line. I think Paris Johnson is going to be a very good pick for them. He can play left tackle. He can play right tackle if you want to keep Braxton Jones on the left side there. I don't think Larry Borom can be a starting caliber player for him this season. He's a nice depth piece, but he really shouldn't be starting for you. I think they need to, continue to build around Justin Fields. They got him a wide receiver in DJ Moore. Go get him some protection with his former teammate and go get Paris Johnson Jr. there. At number 10 here, I'm actually going to have the Eagles perhaps trade down with the Washington Commanders here because I really think that the Commanders could go ahead and get a corner here in a corner draft that is very solid, but there's, only really 2 guys at the very top of this draft, in my opinion. I think that, they're a cornerback needy team. They could go and get somebody that Christian Gonzalez, I think has fallen a little bit too far here for the Eagles. I normally would have them take Gonzalez or Witherspoon, but since they signed Slay and Bradbury back, I don't think they need to take a corner here. Going to get an extra 3rd-round pick here from Washington. I'm going to have the Commanders coming up drafting Christian Gonzalez to add to that corner room. He is an absolute physical freak. I think he would be a lot of fun to add to that Washington defensive back room and would be a great player for them. For the Tennessee Titans, I think you got to consider adding an offensive lineman. I think you got to consider adding a wide receiver or potentially even trading up for a quarterback. I really do like that potential for them if they don't believe in Malik Willis. Obviously, no quarterbacks here really worth doing that. So I am going to have them take Peter Skoronski. He's got inside-outside versatility. His arm length is going to be a concern, and I think that there's a real possibility that they may not love him out at tackle, and a lot of teams may not love him out at tackle, but yeah, I think he could be a very good guard. You could kick him out to tackle if you think he can play there. And the Titans really need to get nasty on that offensive line. You need to get some stability for whoever that quarterback in the future is going to be. I really like Skoronski to the Titans there at number 11. For the Houston Texans now, you got Bryce Young. I like some of the players around him. I think you could certainly go get Quentin Johnston. You could get Jackson Smith and Jigba, the wide receiver of your choice. But I think that D'Amico Ryans is going to be very tempted to add to the defensive front 7. I think getting somebody like Lucas Van Ness, who fits kind of that power profile that I think they really liked in San Francisco. He can be very effective on loops. He's got inside-outside versatility. Would be a really nice player for Houston to kind of develop. As he wasn't even a full-time starter at Iowa, but I really like his ability to develop into potentially a nice pick there. He's not somebody I am super high on, but the NFL draft seems to be very high on him, so I do expect him to go pretty early here in the draft, and I think the Texans could certainly use his services on that defensive front. At number 13 here, I do think that it may end up taking 13 overall to go get Aaron Rodgers. We are going to go under the assumption he is going to play for them, and I'm just going to trade up 13 straight up for Rodgers. Since he came out and said that he is going to play for the Jets, I think that the Packers do have a little bit of leverage to just hold him because, Jets fans expect him to go play in New York at this point. So it may take 13 to go and get him there. I do think that the Packers here at number 13 overall could go in a lot of different directions, but I like Myles Murphy going to them. He is long, he's athletic, he's kind of got that Rashawn Gary build. He's a little bit bigger, he's powerful, as they kind of look to replenish that defensive line, losing Zadarius Smith, a few seasons back, and continuing to upgrade that defensive front. For the New England Patriots now on the clock, I think that offensive tackle is certainly on the board. I'm going to go with Broderick Jones, the tackle out of Georgia. He's a little bit raw when it comes to his pass protection technique, but he is very physically gifted. I think that, the Patriots would really like his upside at that tackle position. You don't really have a lot of stability there right now, and whether it's Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, or someone else, I think you got to build an offensive front that can protect your quarterback, and Broderick Jones would be a great start to really kind of revamping that line. For the Packers, I think that tight end is certainly going to be on the table, and there's really three options that I could see them going with here at number 15. Dalton Kincaid is a great receiver. He's a little bit more of the big slot type. He's not really much of a blocker. Michael Mayer is kind of a do-it-all. He's probably the most complete, but maybe doesn't have the high-end traits that you really look for. And then you've also got Darnell Washington, who's rated really low here on PFF's board, but he's an absolute athletic freak, a great blocker. He's absolutely huge. I could see them going any direction here, but I'm actually going to have them take Darnell Washington. He's big, he's super athletic, he's a great run blocker. I think if they are transitioning to the Jordan Love era, getting somebody that can really help open up running lanes for Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and protect Jordan Love, or go out on routes and be a really big athletic yak receiver, I really like what Darnell Washington could be in this offense for Green Bay. For the Eagles now, trading back, I like this spot now. You picked up an extra pick, and I think that taking somebody like Brian Branch would be absolutely awesome for them. He can kind of play all of the different positions. If they don't bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I think he would be a very natural replacement. He can play slot corner like C.J. Gardner-Johnson did. He can play kind of a safety hybrid role. He can play outside corner. So I think that makes a ton of sense to kind of get cheaper if you don't bring Gardner-Johnson back. So I really like that fit there. And then for the Steelers, going to go with Joey Porter Jr., big physical press man corner. Got the family connection there. It's just too easy to make that selection for the Steelers, especially after losing Cam Sutton, who was a slot corner, but you need to kind of add to that talent in the back end of their defense, and I think Porter Jr. could be a great fit for them. For the Detroit Lions, back on the clock, I think that they could look to go and get a corner. I really like some of the guys they signed in Mosley and in Sutton as well, but I do think you can add to that corner room for the long-term viability of that room, since Okudah, you may not pick up that option on him. Mosley's only on a one-year deal, so I like taking Deonte Banks. He's a nice physical press man corner. Really like his ball skills as well. I think he's a very good corner and is going to go a lot higher than people think. He had a great combine as well. And then for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I love Nolan Smith going to them. Pair him with Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, you get Vita Vea as well. Really like him at that number 19 spot to the Buccaneers. Think he would be a great player on that defensive front for them. At number 20 for the Seattle Seahawks, had them taking Anthony Richardson earlier. I do think they need to beef up that defense. I really like Brian Brzee for them. They like big, physically talented guys. Brzee is certainly that. He didn't necessarily have the production that you look for, and his tape wasn't great last season, but he was going through a lot. I think he is one of the most naturally talented players. It's all just about developing that talent. The Seahawks like to take guys with upside. Brzee is certainly that guy. For the Chargers now on the clock at pick 21, think that they need to take a speed wide receiver. There's not really a lot of guys on the board, but I do like Zay Flowers for them. I do think he is a good wide receiver. He's a little bit shorter, but he does provide kind of that field stretching element. I think he could be predominantly a slot player, but I do really like kind of his ability to stretch the field. He's a good route runner. I do think that there's a good chance that he is one of the first wide receivers off the board, and the Chargers could certainly be making that pick because this is a really weak wide receiver class in general. For the Baltimore Ravens at pick number 22, I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver out of TCO. He's got a lot of natural talent. He's very big. He's very physical. He is very fast as well for his size. His biggest issue is just kind of playing to that size. He needs to be a lot more consistent high pointing the ball. He needs to be a lot more consistent kind of attacking and using his size and his leverage to really outmuscle defenders on deep contested catches. I don't love his contested catch ability, but he does a lot of other things well. He's a good yak receiver. He's got that speed element. I think he's a decent route runner, so I like what he could be for the Ravens in this offense, and they need to continue to add to that wide receiver room. Bateman is decent when he's healthy, but there's just not a lot of talent outside of that, and especially if you're going to be keeping Lamar Jackson, you got to help him out. For the Minnesota Vikings, I really think that they need to add to that corner room. They've invested a lot in it, but Andrew Booth is really the only guy that has any kind of upside, in my opinion, really there. So I think they're going to take Cam Smith. He's nice. He's physical. He's got a great mentality for the position. I think that, Brian Flores really likes corners that can be aggressive. You lost Cameron Dansley. You cut him. So I think getting somebody like Cam Smith to match Andrew Booth on the outside would give you at least some upside at that corner position moving forward. At number 24, the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. They lost Jawan Taylor in free agency to the Kansas City Chiefs, who are moving him over to the left side. They gave him a big deal. So I think that they can, maybe add to that tackle room. It's all about, do you trust Walker Little at that spot? I think that DeJuan Jones is a good player, and that's potentially where they could go. I'm going to go with Kalijah Kancey, though. I think they need to add some pass rush upside on the interior of that defense. You've got Trayvon Walker. You've got Josh Allen. Go and get some more pass rush upside on the interior and get Kalijah Kancey. I think that would be a nice fit for the Jaguars defense that can still use some improvement, even though they did go deep into the playoffs this year. For the New York Giants, now on the clock, I don't think they need to go with wide receiver. I think they could go with a tight end instead. I do think that would be an option. I think you can go interior offensive line, maybe even linebacker. I like some of the options that they got now that they opened themselves up a little bit in free agency, signing some decent wide receivers. But Jackson Smith and Jigba still on the board here. I think that's ultimately going to be the pick. I think he's very good at getting open. He had an elite 3-cone time. He was very good in the agility drills. So I think that kind of bumped his stock back up a little bit. A lot of people thought he may fall out of the first round. I think he's going late round 1. And I like his fit here in the Giants offense, kind of fitting into that slot receiver role and kind of providing a very high floor player, in my opinion. I'm not sure he's ever going to be an elite level receiver, but I think he's going to be very good from day one and probably fit in very well early on. For the Dallas Cowboys, this is tough. I think you could go in a lot of different directions, but I'm so tempted with Bijan Robinson. They did franchise tag Tony Pollard, but I do think that potentially they're going to be their long-term option. They are moving on from Ezekiel Elliott. So maybe Bijan Robinson, I think, they moved on from Dalton Schultz. So maybe you take somebody like Kincaid or Michael Mayer. You could add to that wide receiver room, which I think is lacking besides CeeDee Lamb. So a lot of different options. I do think potentially offense here. I ultimately just can't pass on Bijan Robinson going to Texas, being the face of the Cowboys. He's just so talented, and I think he should go in the top 20 of this draft. It's just very hard to find a fit for him. I think the Cowboys are really the first team that it just makes so much sense for him. And that's where I'm going to have him go in this draft at number 26 overall. For the Buffalo Bills, really think that they need to add to that right side of the offensive line. I think Spencer Brown has been very, very underwhelming. So I'm going to go with DeWant Jones, the tackle out of Ohio State. Just absolutely gigantic. Already plays right tackle. I think he's very good at it. So I really like that pick for them. I think it just makes a lot of sense to go protect Josh Allen, kind of build up in that running game. I thought he looks very comfortable in space for his size. Just a gigantic skyscraper. But I think he's a very good athlete for that size. For the Cincinnati Bengals, they went and got Orlando Brown. I really liked that signing for them on the left side for the price that they got him at. I think they could go right tackle now because Jonah Williams has requested a trade, doesn't want to play on that right side. So I think you could look for somebody like Darnell Wright. I think you could go and get somebody like Anton Harrison. Maybe move him over to the right side. You don't want to kind of pigeonhole yourself into tackle, though. I do think tight end is another big area of need for them. They don't currently have really any tight ends on the roster besides Devin Asiasi. Michael Mayer makes just so much sense for them. It's hard to pass on a tackle, but I think Mayer is the pick here. I just think that he provides some really good upside both in the passing game and the blocking game. He's just a very complete guy. Maybe not, going to ever be the best tight end on the field, but he's just very complete. I think he's very good at the position and going to be a good player for a long time. It also does help that he is a Bengals fan, so I think that just maybe adds a little bit extra to that pick there. For the New Orleans Saints now on the clock, I am going to go with Adebawore, edge/defensive interior player from Northwestern. He's got some real good inside-outside versatility. I think he could be very successful kind of on either side. I think he's kind of like Cam Jordan. He's about 270 pounds. He's long. He's very, very athletic. I think this makes just a lot of sense kind of as a Cam Jordan replacement. You're losing Marcus Davenport to Minnesota, so I really like this pick, kind of filling in as a replacement player. Lots of versatility. He's very, very high upside player with all of those athletic gifts that he has. So I really like this pick for the Saints. Next up, we've got the Eagles on the clock. I'm going to have them select one of my favorite players in the draft, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I think he is very good when it comes to a pass rush plan. I think he's a very polished pass rusher. He's got a lot of different tools in his arsenal. It can go to a lot of different moves. I think he's very technically sound. I think he's got underrated power. And I think his bend's not the best, but it's very functional. I think he's kind of a very natural Brandon Graham replacement, actually. And so I really like him at pick 30 here. You get Brian Branch, you get Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I think those are both very good additions to the defense. And then finally, you've got the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it's got to be Will McDonald. A lot of people think that he's potentially going very high in this draft. Really like his upside in a defense that really lets him go and get after the passer. He really didn't get to do that much at Iowa State at all. So I really like that he could potentially come into Kansas City and be a really good pass rusher from day one. Him and Carl Loftus can kind of be the future at that position for them. And that's going to do it for the 2023 post-free agency mock draft. If you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button down below. Trying to build a great NFL and NFL draft community. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.